Winter is coming.
Where are my dragons?
In the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die.
The things I do for love.
A Lannister always pays his debts.
Chaos is a ladder.
Hodor.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
We
We are the Rewatchers on the wall.
I'm the man who killed Jaime
Oh,
Lord. Oh, I just shit my pants.
That's what they don't tell you about war. Everyone poops themselves.
I feel like I've been told that a lot over the media in the past 10 years.
So now now there has to be a new thing they don't
Yeah.
tell you about war.
That's the thing they always tell you about war. They shit themselves, but what they don't tell you, sometimes they don't.
I feel like by the time I hear that, everyone will have already heard it. So I'm just always going to be on the other side of this war.
It just makes
bell
me
curve.
feel like one day when I die in war, which will probably not happen.
Depends on how you
War
define
with
war,
cancer,
I guess.
maybe.
Yeah, war with cancer. They're like, for me to get involved in a conflict where like I'm in war, it'd probably be something like fairly apocalyptic.
Yeah, no, I'm with
But
you.
if
I'm
I
with you.
do, I'm going to be like, as soon as I get shot, my first thought will not be sadness, will not be, damn, will not be about my family. It will be, don't poop your pants. Don't be the guy who smells up the battlefield.
You're gonna die with the tightest rectum.
Oh
of
my God.
anyone.
Wow, this person had perma-clenched their cheeks. Wow.
Well, speaking of perma-clenched cheeks, Daenerys is really uppity in this episode of Game of Thrones. Speaking of bad segues, I'm Tyler McKinley.
We're rolling with it, Tyler. Thanks, Tyler. This was the penultimate episode of Game of Thrones. This
Barely
is the Rewatchers
penned, I
on
would
the wall.
say. I don't know. Looking into it,
But not very ultimate-y. I'm Mitchell Marshall,
Yeah.
Tyler Harris,
Hi.
Riley Harris, and the aforementioned Tyler McKinley. Tyler, what happened here in this episode of Game of Thrones?
Let me tell you, on this episode of Game of Thrones, Varys disseminates dangerous information, then tries to convince Jon to help him out. Tyrion throws Varys under a dragon-sized bus. Dany prepares to attack King's Landing. Jon tells Dany he loves her, then rejects her moments later. Tyrion tells her that Grey Worm, if the bells ring, then they need to stop. Everyone agrees. What could go wrong? Jaime's been captured by Dany's soldiers. The Hound and Arya arrive at King's Landing. Tyrion frees Jaime and tasks him with what Jaime is best at, complex and delicate political maneuverings. Oh, and by the way, if the bells ring, then the city will be fine. Just remember that. Tyrion really wants you to remember that. Cersei stands on a balcony. Dany destroys the Iron Fleet, probably like she should have last episode, then destroys the back of the city. Cersei apparently can't see anything from that balcony. The Golden Company surrenders. Cersei realizes they have lost. The bells ring. Remember, that means everything's going to be okay with the city. So yeah, that was a fucking lie. Dany burns the city. Grey Worm continues killing again. Jaime is sneaking into the city. Euron finds him. They fight. The Hound sends Arya home. The Hound finds the mountain. The mountain kills Qyburn. Cersei slowly walks away from danger. Jaime kills Euron. The Hound and the mountain continue to fight. Arya runs through the city. Jaime finds Cersei. The Hound tackles the mountain off a tower. Jon commands his men to fall back. Arya is saving Private Ryan through King's Landing. Jaime and Cersei attempt to escape, then are crushed under the city. Arya is still trying to escape, then sees a white horse. Wait, is this all a Twin Peaks reference? And scene. That's the reference. No one's going to get that, and you'll get it in a month, and you'll be like, that was not even worth it.
Honestly, my first thought was Taylor Swift. She has a song called White Horse, so...
Oh, okay.
I was the only one who thought Shadowfax. He's the Lord of Horses.
Oh, yeah.
He's in every fantasy thing.
I came here to save you from this horrible ending of this series.
Riley, what did you think of this episode?
I didn't like it.
Okay, why?
I hadn't given up hope on this show until this episode.
What broke your spirit?
Dany just deciding to burn everyone. Like, that's not who she's been this whole time, and I'm not
Hot
here
take,
for
it's
it.
not who she's been, but it's what they've been hinting at forever,
Yeah.
and it completely makes sense for her character.
I agree.
It's dumb.
I think it's poorly executed.
Yeah.
I
stumbled
want
into
it.
it,
I
yeah.
want her to be that. I did not have fun this episode. I didn't think it was a good. I don't think that the build is good to that. And I don't.
What elements of the build were missing for you?
Just any time. That's the story for me. That's the story of the last two seasons of Twin Peaks.
Twin
Fuck
Peaks.
off.
Keep your
Of
mind
Game
in the
of
present,
Thrones.
Tyler. We got one more week of this.
Of Game of Thrones is there is not enough time for these huge plot points and turns to have the emotional impact that I desperately want them to have. You know what I mean? Like I want Dany to go mad, and I want to be conflicted about it, and I don't have the time to be conflicted about it. And like that's the biggest thing is like there are things in this episode I like theoretically, but the execution this season, and I think you can stretch this back to last season and maybe even a few things before that, but execution wise, it's just not working. It doesn't get there for me. It doesn't give me the emotional reaction that I have gotten from this show in the past and that I expect and want at the end of this show. You know what I mean? Like it breaks my heart a little bit that I have to say that, but like it bums me out. So
You said something really good after the episode. You said something like, if someone would have listed out the bullet points of the last 2 seasons, you probably would have been on board with most of the plot. Mm-hmm. And it would have like been like, yeah, the first 6 seasons set a foundation for this ending, but the time it takes to get places and grow things is difficult.
Yeah.
And that does track with me. I absolutely think this could have literally had, let's say this was season 10, episode 9. Let's say they did 10 seasons, 10 episodes. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. With their constraints, like, I didn't finish that episode pissed off. And I would say more than everyone pretty much in our watching party was to some degree of unhappy, but a couple people vocally, and we probably tried to save some of our takes for this podcast, but we're like, wow, that was the most horrendous, and there were some things I was on board with, they said, and some not, but they just trashed on it. And then my roommate texted me right after that and was like, here, and I give very little credence to my roommate saying it's bad writing, but he was like, this is bad writing, and I was just like, there's a point last season, I think, when I was like, hey, they're going to end this some way, and I'll talk about this to do with the books as well later on, but I was like, there's kind of a point when it's like, hey, stop watching. Like, you got to, this is what it's going to be, and you have to let D.B. Weiss and Dan and D&D and what are their names? Benioff and Weiss. I don't know where I went off.
Wait,
with that.
so if someone doesn't like it, they're not allowed to finish it
and
give critique on it?
But there's a point when it's like, hey, you're shitting on it so much that it's like, why are you watching?
Why do we critique things, Mitchell? Why do we critique media at all? So that it gets better, right? We need if you don't hold anything responsible, nothing gets better, and all of a sudden millions of dollars getting pushed into this shit that people are just like, oh, people love this shit, but if no one's vocalizing what's really wrong with it, then it's like, oh, we're just assuming everyone loves this. Like, that's my problem with that whole concept.
I'm just saying there's a point when you're like, hey, the story is being finished the way it's being finished. They've had this planned out for at least 3 years. So it's like, for me, I don't think that they're doing anything so out of the blue that I'm going to be like, gosh, they're bad storytellers. Because we know they're quality storytellers who are having to end this in a certain way. And there are some leaps and things I'm unhappy with. But I'm also just like,
but are they quality storytellers on their own, or are they good when they're following the source material?
I think season 5 and 6, and I know a lot of people disagree on 5, and especially a couple of specific elements of it, vastly disagree, but a lot of that is not in the books. It is best storytelling.
Because I think 5 is dismal. I think 6 has
I
really
think 6
high
is
highs
easily
and really
a top
low
2
lows.
season, and that is them.
And I think that they struggle. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Tyler mentioned after the episode of writers who write events and try and force their characters into those events. You can tell this episode especially. They had visuals in mind. Mm-hmm. They had set pieces in mind. And they just have shoehorned their characters since the beginning of the season to get into those. There's nothing that feels believable. Danny's thing, I agree. I like that we get there. I like the bullet point of that we get to that point. And I even liked the buildups we've had to that, to here. There's a huge missing piece between last episode and this episode for me to believe that everything we've seen of Danny, there's never been a point where I'm like, yep, she's gotten to that point where she's just going to snap and be like, I don't care. I'm going to burn a whole bunch of innocent people just because there's nothing for her to gain by doing that. There's literally nothing for her to gain strategically by doing that. I could see burning the Red Keep down with all those people inside. That makes sense. But to just go ham on the city for like hours? Fuck that. Like, that's where, like, and that's happening for a good majority of the episode, and they hammer into you. It is over and over and over again. I'm seeing the same shot of people running down an alleyway with flames coming at them. I'm like, holy shit, I get it.
That was definitely overdone, and there were gratuitous moments that I get where they were showing the tragedy in. But I just, real quick, I absolutely agree she should have burned the Red Keep and not the whole thing, and that's a little extreme. But there comes to a point where it's like, if there's a switch in a Targaryen's head, because you remember her dad ruled and was always the Mad King, but he wasn't necessarily off the handle to the point where no one was there. And once he started getting to that point, that's when things started to spin with the previous part of the reign of the Targaryens. So to me, when we saw it click with her, when the bells rang, why would there be any limit to how crazy she's willing to go?
Because they've described the Mad King as kind of more of a gradual thing in the previous episodes and throughout the season, and even in the books. This was such a, and that's storytelling. You look at something like a similar story of something like There Will Be Blood, and it's about a man who's declined into madness over his obsession. That happens at such a good pace and is so believable that when he dismisses his son at the end and then just kills this man with a bowling pin, you completely believe that this man has arrived at that destination. And it's a nice gradual build, and all the steps that have taken to get there make sense. Whereas this just feels like it's missing a few steps.
It is, and they haven't had time for it. I just feel like increasingly over the last 2 seasons, they've been hinting more and more that she is going to be the Mad Queen. And even in the very beginning, they talk about the coin flip quote. They reference it before the episode, and then in the episode. To me, it was just like, I really felt like for the last 3 years, I was like, Dany probably goes mad at the end of this. And what's interesting is what happens around it. And especially with Missandei dying and saying Dracarys, it's huge jumps. But to me, the amount of hitting and increasing at that madness tracks. Is it as much as I would have liked? Of course not. There wasn't time for that. I just don't think that I don't think that the creators of the show did this destructive disservice.
So as long as I foreshadow, I can write shitty transitions.
Yep. Tyler, I'm sorry, you've been
hearing.
cut off like 3 times.
Here's the biggest thing for me is like I feel like we have 6 episodes this season. The last 2 episodes we've watched have been an hour and 20 minutes. This is an hour and 20 minutes, and I believe the last one's an hour and 20
Correct.
minutes, right? Every episode that has been that length, I have had the same feeling. I feel like I could do without 10 to 20 minutes of this episode. There are things in this episode. But then the thing that frustrates me more is I would have loved to have seen these 10 or 20 minutes allocated to something else. And like 10 to 20 minutes in a show like this, when you look in the grand scheme, that may seem small. But I can't help but think there are better things we could have done than slow pans across watching peasants burn. Like there was so much of that we could have done without that. And like and that's the thing too, is like again, like Dany burning the entire city, I don't have any problems with that. I am ready for it to, I am fine with it escalating to that level. But yeah, it is a harder pill to swallow when you don't have that build there, you know, and it really is. I don't know if I've ever felt as conflicted about something, for so many of the reasons I've said, and I've invested not that much time into this show. Right. You know what I mean? Like I started watching it. We start in December, January? I don't know. Whenever we started watching. And it's April now for everyone who's listening to this 10 years from now.
You chose this of the podcasts to rewatch with. You were born in 2020, and you're like, I'm gonna watch one of the classics.
Yeah, during the apocalypse, one of the only radio tower to survive is broadcasting our podcast to the world, and people are understanding media that they've never seen. Anyways, but yeah, that to me that's the biggest thing, and there are a lot of ends in this episode. There are a lot of endings to stories that. Man, it had to be like this, you know. It's really a letdown for some of those things that we've been talking about. You know, when we were talking about in season 6 and stuff, and we were talking about the Hound and the Mountain, like colliding at some point, and like how cathartic that was going to be, and what a thing that was going to be. I'm going to talk about that real quick, I guess.
Let's go. Let's start going through some characters and some plot points.
So basically, the Hound. Meeting up with the Mountain killing Qyburn, which was a pretty great moment. And then Cersei just sidling her way out of danger. Was there were parts that I liked. That was fine. Like I didn't mind any of that. But the big problem I have with the Hound and the Mountain like battle that takes place is for me, and I think in this show we don't see everything we know about their beef is backstory. It's so much stuff that's happened before this show, and now that conflict for me felt a little lackluster because what I wanted was that conflict to mean something to the Hound's emotional journey at this point. In my head, this was him and Arya going into the Red Keep and Arya being endangered by the Mountain. Like he grabs her or something, and the Hound basically sacrifices himself for Arya in some way. I kind of thought that might happen in the Battle of Winterfell when he saw she was in danger. And so without any, for me, that moment just didn't have the emotional impact I wanted it to have because it was all based on things that we hadn't seen. And we hadn't seen those effects on the character. We already knew them in the state after that. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if
think
that
we
was
talked
that way
about
for
it a little bit
anyone
about
else.
it last
but...
episode of just there's not enough there.
Yeah.
The only real emotional resonance here is the Hound kind of comes to a point where he's like, my life is a little bit pointless.
Yeah.
And we see his humanity, but he still's just like, all I want to do is kill my brother and not be near fire. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And we learn a little bit more about him. So it's hard that that's his ending because I care about him so much.
Right.
As far as their brotherly conflict, that might be an element of fan service that I was like, I don't actually care how that goes down. I did think that I was like, hey, he wants to kill him. She wants to kill Cersei. They're headed to the same place. Yeah. That's dope. As far as like it happening, like I thought it was like visually fun and like happening in like this just absolutely this world falling apart. Yeah. But in the end, because I wasn't invested in that relationship. Yes, they could have done something to punch it up and make it more emotionally valuable, but I didn't care that much.
Well, and that I think that's the problem.
Yeah,
for me.
yeah,
We're
you know what I
spending
mean?
a lot of time on something we don't care about.
And the Hound is a character that I think all of us can agree that we care about.
Yeah,
right. You know,
but the Mountain we don't care
exactly. Yeah, and so that's where I think the big problem is that who gives a shit?
Yeah.
He's been literally a zombie for like 4 seasons, just a big mass of flesh.
I do love how
he barely do anything.
He just keeps getting stabbed. It's like nothing. He doesn't fail.
I love the whole building collapses on top of him, and he just covers Cersei and Qyburn. Like
this huge boulder comes down. He's like, ugh.
yeah. What's a boulder to a mountain?
Who threw
Oh,
that
shit, it
piece
can
of
talk.
paper?
He doesn't even look like the actor who plays it.
That's
Made
what
him
I thought.
such a
I was
different,
like,
goopy
oh.
looking thing.
Yeah, it was really
He looked
weird.
like Varys.
He really did. Yeah, just a
Bloated Varys.
bulbous bald head. But yeah, so that I don't know. That was a moment that kind of fell a little flat for me. That again, not ultimately important to the end of the series, but like something that I wanted to feel a little bit more.
People want him to fight. They fought. They died. It was like, I don't know. The Hound's one of those people who I don't know what would have been next for him, but we all thought he was going to die.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about Arya since we just went off down. So she, it kind of did work for me. I think a little bit better that she had kind of turned to this dark person. Of course, I wish we had 3 episodes to hang out with them on the King's Road for sure. But
we all do. I think.
Yeah, to see one thing, she might be one of the emotional arcs that worked best for me this season. As far as just like we know how dark she is and how single-minded she is, because as much as like she feels these things for Gendry, she also is like, there's something I got to do and something I know I can't be. But
we've definitely seen her in the most diverse situations.
Yes.
Like I don't know if I can name another character that has been given as much opportunity to show growth and journey as Arya has this season.
So for her to like break at the end there and just be like, yeah, it's not worth your life to complete this list that has already been so consuming for you. Mm-hmm. And then she becomes our avatar and she works really hard to save a mother and daughter, and we just see her almost die in 10 different ways. I will tell you, I would have been as irate as absolutely anyone if Arya would have just died as a consequence of the dragon destroying the city. I would have flipped. I legitimately might not have watched the last episode. That could have been the straw that made me do something like that. But Otherwise, she finds a white horse. She gets out at the end. We still have not seen her.
She finds a
use
white
her
horse. I'm
face.
glad that the fact that the horse is white is like the fact. It's like every time we describe that horse, it's going to be a white horse for
It's a
whatever
white horse.
reason.
That's what takes you to safety. But otherwise, she doesn't. She's just out there trying to survive.
Yeah.
We don't even get to see her really fight anything, which would have been cool. I hope there's someone. I don't know if she kills Danny here, and we'll definitely get to who gets to kill Danny. Does Danny die? Type of thing at the end here. But I want to see her fight a little bit more.
Arya?
Arya.
Yeah, I agree.
I
I want to see her wearing at least 3 faces next episode.
Use a face. There were so many opportunities for a face usage.
I would love for every character in the next episode, except for Daenerys, to be Arya.
Daenerys is jacking.
Let's.
Me again.
I thought it was him.
One thing, a lot of us thought she wanted to kill Cersei. We thought maybe she does it with Jaime's face. Maybe Jaime does it. I like the juxtaposition that the incestuous, disgusting couple gets to die in each other's arms, even though they are ultimately evil and do die. I'm actually okay with that ending. Again, how we got there, we missed some things.
I will
And
say
we did want someone else to kill her.
I will say of the many sins that we have enumerated this season, I think the greatest is the underutilization of Lena Headey.
Yeah, she really screen time wise.
What a
tiny.
yeah. And almost entirely in that dumbass room overlooking King's Landing. What a huge disservice to that character. I feel like what a bummer. Yeah.
That's why almost if she gets captured or if she has to have a moment with Jaime where he turns on her or where Arya takes something from her, there's just so much more strength and emotional resonance that can come. But again, like we don't get the Valonqar prophecy fulfilled.
I don't remember what that one is. Is that? Oh, that's the one that she got when she was a kid, right? Okay,
right.
okay.
And it would have said one of her brothers would have strangled her, and so Jaime's journey.
So magic
he gets
is
freed,
bullshit.
Which is
every
Tyrion
episode's
putting himself on the
a
line.
different story with this magic. It works. It doesn't. What the fuck is going on in Westeros?
Insanely inconsistent. Which some of that is George made. Because he doesn't want it to be overly fantasy dominated, and sometimes the God magic works, sometimes it doesn't. But in the show, they definitely just don't give a shit about it.
That last bit of the prophecy though is in the show, so it's like
we thought
according
they
to
cut
the show,
it.
it still sticks to those rules, but like in the books, who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully, it's better than that. Because honestly, like that death, I think is a waste. I think the death of both those characters is a waste for someone who has survived like post the Night King battle. Like that's like their main objective. There was no direct interaction really between Cersei and Daenerys. There was none between like any of the Starks and her. Yeah. And like
and I think too the way that Jaime dies, I don't know. I think that in some ways his arc was underserved too, just because I feel like there needed to be a final button, like a bigger choice for him waiting at King's Landing that just wasn't there. And so it's one of those things like, again, I don't know that I hate this ending, but I think it was underserved in a lot of ways.
I agree. If she would have had more of those character interactions, more of those moments, and maybe even more of like like she's won a lot over the last couple of seasons, but like if she would have had something like this episode, we thought it was a battle. This was not a battle episode. It was a disaster episode, which like she never had a freaking shot. And we can definitely talk about the Scorpions and a little bit of a turn there on their effectiveness.
I will say.
But you're right. Their death was okay.
Yeah.
It's what we needed in between that. Hopefully the book will serve. I was okay with Jaime in the end ending being that guy. I love him as a character. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that again it's just a time thing, unfortunately.
Let's talk about the Scorpions real quick.
I mean, there's so many things about this battle you can like just go through and pick. Be like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. This doesn't make any fucking sense, especially considering what we've seen the past episode.
Yeah.
Right. Like she takes out the whole Iron Fleet by herself with the dragon, and that can't get anywhere near hitting her. They take longer to load, like you mentioned. Then she just sneaks around the back of the city and just takes out the front gate. The Golden Company is fucking worthless.
I will say,
that was funny to me.
I think the fact that there's like the leader of the Golden Company that just gets that hero shot like 2 or 3 times before they just get fucking wrecked is pretty awesome. I'm totally down with that.
That build didn't feel anything for me. Like,
right.
It's like, especially taking the gate of King's Landing. If you told me about that, I was getting like taking the gate of King's Landing is something that's always going to happen in this series.
Yeah.
Even in the books when you're reading them, you're like, that's going to be the huge battle. This battle's going to be the best. This was the shittiest battle. This is the most boring-ass battle I've ever seen in my life.
Well, honestly, it feels like the shots that we get of that Golden Company guy make me think there are a lot of scenes that are not in this show.
It's
and
true.
that will
He
not
might
be
have
in
had
this
a
show.
little bit of a story.
Yeah, where he is interacting with people. Because the way that's presented visually, it's like, look, it's that guy you know, and none of us knew him, and
We saw him
whatever.
The guy who
Time.
failed to bring elephants.
Yeah. I
That's-
wanted there to just be elephants just showing up.
That's it. They just throw him in this
Dope.
episode,
Like, no, actually, we went back and we got him.
and elephants just squirt water
Yeah.
at the dragons right into the dragon's mouth.
It's just
There's
water
the
against fire.
firefighters.
Just like push it.
Just an anime ass like beam battle going on. It's back and forth.
So I guess the scorpions, take a long time to turn, take a long time to reload. They surprised
They were all
Rhaegal,
loaded,
and the other
though.
dragon got killed with one, and then the other, it was just apparently a really good shot by Bronn. But yeah, this time around, she's like, I should just watch out so I can dodge these, go one way so that they have to keep adjusting, and then, but the city was lined with them, and she gets them all.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was, I mean, I know we had to get to the point where Dany was completely irredeemable. Like, she could, because if we would have said, okay, she killed 10,000 people and the Red Keep, and then, like, the Armada, the soldiers, and the people around the walls, but left the other 900,000 people in King's Landing, it would probably would have been, like, bad and a little mad, but maybe her and Jon could rule together. And now we're just like, this crazy bee. But the scorpions, I like the part where Cersei's like, but what about the other scorpions? But what about the Armada? Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh.
Yeah, no optometrists in Westeros. I'm convinced Cersei suffered from severe nearsightedness.
I mean, this goes along with a theory, like a theme with the whole episode for me, and even kind of this whole season of, like I mentioned earlier, they have such visuals in mind that they're just like, fuck the rules we've written about these things. We want this visual, so this has to happen, and it's sloppy. It's just sloppy.
Yeah.
Real quick, it begins with Varys pretty much being like, I'm going to tell everyone and see if we can get Jon, like some support behind Jon and just commit full-on treason. Tyrion and Jon still thinking Dany's going to be all right. Really screw the pooch. I love that moment when Tyrion's like, it was me. Just saying. It was me. I'm sorry, bud. And then he gets burned alive, dies in Westeros as we knew he must.
He put like a lot. Like I was surprised that he just like kind of went for it. He put a lot of line just approaching Jon, being like, of all the ways to go about it, I felt like he'd do a little more sneaky. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know what that way would be.
Yeah, time is of the essence.
So it's like he just goes and is like, hey, you should commit treason with us.
Yeah, so he dies. We got, obviously you talked about Jaime, Cersei, Euron.
Oh, before we move on from that section, we should talk about the most awkward scene for me of Jon and Daenerys in her room, and Jon's like,
"Oh, this
I
girl,
still love you," and she's like, "That's something I don't get." I think they really fucked Jon's character over this season. They've made him dumber. Especially after the arc he's gone through. I love Jon's arc. It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And
there were times I hated it, and then I came to love it.
Yeah, once it finally gets come around, that's when I'm like, oh, I now appreciate all these other things.
Yeah.
And then it just feels like a waste between like everything this season. But they've dumbed him down. They've made him like this bumbling, like, oh, I don't want to offend my sister. Oh, I don't want to offend my girlfriend. What do I do?
Yeah.
And then he's like, why does he love her at this point? He should see. He's a good guy. He should see.
Well, I will say, it kind of tracks with this character, because who among us has not been like, I love you still? And then when they call you on it, you're like, I guess I don't.
I feel like he started kissing and it was like, oh yeah, you're my aunt.
Yeah, that was like, so. She's like,
was
what
weird.
else am I to you? And I was like, is that what's going through his head? Is that why he stopped? And she's like, oh, it's fear. And it was like, he was afraid of having sex with you.
Yeah, it's a weird. That scene is weird to me.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of like complex emotional things that go into what that scene is for sure. But it seemed like we didn't really see a lot of them. Like it was weird.
I like how at some point Dany was kind of like, anyone who knows this this is bad. Like knowing this is treason, thinking it's anything real, like it's treason because it threatens her. And so it came to a point where it was like, hey, what could Jon have done there? He could have slept with her and said, hey, I'll help the realm. I'll help you win over the realm, and we'll lead together and just tell everyone to get used to incest. Like, and would she have wanted...
Incest. Get used to it.
Like, what can he say there for her to think, yeah, he's going to help them love me, not fear me? Or he could have just said, hey, you rule, I'll take the black, and then guess what? You are next in line. Like, I don't know what resolution works there for Dany, and obviously it's where they wanted to go, but yeah, that moment seems to be an excuse for them trying to get through a lot of the emotions those two characters need to get through that they don't have time.
I would even just take like 3 minutes of screen time and just have Jon be a little bit more combative about...
Yeah, well, I think that's how that scene works better, is you see a little more fire from both of them, because she did give him an ultimatum. She told him how it would work, and he went against that. So we do kind of have that, like, laid out in this season pretty clearly. But yeah, we didn't really see... I wouldn't call what we saw a resolution to that. You know what I mean? So yeah, interesting. Weird scene.
Otherwise, Jon brings the army in, and then the other guys quit, and then he kind of has to defend himself, and then realizes, oh, my own guys are shitty, and they're all turning into Dothraki, pillaging along, even though...
Which there are still plenty of.
I know. Yeah. And Dany did not even care about burning her own people at some point.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's...
She was just like, whatever.
Yeah. Again, whatever. Madness works that way, sure.
Yeah. And so, Jon just... I mean, obviously, he... now realizes everything horrible about here. So what's interesting is we saw a very brief glimpse at the next episode. Is this like, why? I guess she doesn't really know Tyrion let Jaime go, but at what point she knows they both hate what she did. Are they, I wonder if they're with her or just off planning something. It looks like Tyrion's with her at the beginning of next episode, which is interesting to think like, she must know no one likes what she did, and she just must think that they're so scared of her that they won't do anything. Yeah. But now Dany and Drogon gotta die, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Who kills him? I can't. I hope it's Jon. Yeah. I think he deserves it at this point.
I kind of agree with that. I think the cooler way is Arya.
Yeah.
But I think there is a certain
poeticness
to Jon killing Dany for sure.
On paper, I want Jon. What they've done in the show so far, I don't feel like that's earned. I think, at least with Arya, we've followed her through this episode, seen her like has like a big reason to hate her at this point. We feel more emotionally connected to that a little bit, and she was going to kill the queen anyway, just a different one ends up being like I don't know, but at the same time it's like she already killed the Night King. Is that too much? So it's like for me it's almost a little bit of a lose-lose, but it's like we'll see who ends up doing it. I'm interested.
Tyrion.
I hope it's not that. I don't know. I think Tyrion's another character that since he left King's Landing has not been as interesting as you would hope him to be, unfortunately. And I do think one of my favorite lines in this episode that made me laugh a little bit was Dany being like, next time you mess up, that's it. It's like, wow, yeah, strike 55 is really, that's where I draw the line in the sand.
Him and Jaime have a nice moment. Well, you know, I'm trying to think, who is on Dany's side? Like, obviously she has militia people following her, but it's really just Grey Worm and Drogon, so someone's got to kill, like, I guess it's going to be fun to watch someone fight Grey Worm. I liked the Grey Worm heel turn. I'm here for it. Him just being like, I'm like, now that she's gone, I'm done. And like, if she's destroying everybody, like, why are we going to let these people live? And he was just down to go. I thought for a second him and Jon might fight, and I was like, yes,
that would have been really cool.
I'm not sure that's not going to happen.
No, it could for sure.
But yeah, that moment could have been cool.
We kind of have to see those things resolve themselves, and then we also have to get an ending to some degree. I think Sam and Sansa at least we have to see, and probably Brienne.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you guys think that we're done with the Starks? Like, are we? I mean, until the end, like they're going to go back to Winterfell. Someone is, and be like, "Oh, hey guys," or are they going to play a role in King's Landing stuff?
I think they have to. Everyone's dead. Here's the thing,
because they're not there, right?
No, they're not there, right? They stayed at Winterfell. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. This definitely changes the like the demographics of the southern part of the Seven Kingdoms by a large margin. That census is going to be interesting.
Someone does say at some point that there are 1 million people in King's Landing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Let's say 900,000 of them are now dead.
Yeah.
But you know what? After the casualties of last episode, maybe 500,000 are alive. I don't know.
Well, and like your
We killed 10 people.
Half of King's Landing is gone.
Just drag it away.
yeah, and your infrastructure's fucked. Like, I don't see that's another thing. Is like that doesn't strategically work for her, and so it's like, what do you do? I mean, maybe they'll address that. Maybe like, you burned everything. We don't have toilets fucking working. Like,
Well, she obviously has a rule from somewhere else, I guess, for the time being, or rebuild that. And
she really wanted that Iron Throne. I guess.
Yeah,
she's got to go find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there is something. Again, there is something poetic about Dany destroying
Like burning it
the
all,
things
like
her family built. You know what I mean? Again, we didn't quite get there for me emotionally, but in theory, that
She broke the
feels
wheel.
pretty great. Yeah, yeah, she did that. And so yeah, that's interesting. I'm interested to see what. I mean, if she is just resigned to die at this point, I don't know. Like,
No,
what-
she still wants to rule. I don't think
Yeah.
she's resigned to die. I think,
I
to
just
me, as a
don't-
storytelling choice, I'm resigned she needs to die.
Yeah, for sure. I just, again, Danny's a really hard character for me to read because at the point we're at now, I feel like for me, I kind of used this analogy earlier, but I feel like her arc, what they want it to be, is kind of like Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Right. This is a good example.
They want you to feel conflicted about what she's doing. And then at the end of that, I feel like you will still be conflicted and she will tilt the needle slightly in one direction. And I don't think we're going to see that in this. You know what I mean? Like that we got
feel
with
like
Walter
after
White.
this, they were like, she has gone completely off the rails. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things end. Like, maybe each of the Seven Kingdoms is now going to be their own kingdom.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Essos is in no way united. Maybe Jon goes beyond the wall, Sansa rules the north, and then they're like, screw everything south. Like, who freaking knows at this
Yeah.
point? Like,
Yeah.
we also have to see, who is oh man, I'm forgetting names. The guy who was Stannis' guy?
Davos.
Davos, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
what happens to people like that?
Yeah.
There are just a lot of Bran obviously has this huge connection. It's like, hey, are we completely done with this? Bran could still warg Drogon. That could still happen.
Just to check in.
Yeah.
He's gonna warg some pigeons instead. That's more his vibe.
But we've got a lot to do. Next one. Is there a satisfying way that this ends for you that even slightly makes up for how you feel the show has gone wrong in the last 2 seasons?
I think at this point, this is the second to last episode. There's not a whole lot they can do. Even if they were to hit the right notes, it wouldn't be earned for me. From a writing standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, even a tonal standpoint, the tone of this episode was so bonkers that, like,
I actually really liked it.
I mean, I could have guessed, Mitchell,
It
but
was so just chaotic and destructive
Like-
and tragic.
for me, it was fun to laugh at, but it makes me cry a little to think back to the Sean Bean era of Game of Thrones and think, holy shit, this is where it comes to. Like, that hurt a little bit, and I don't think on those 3 fronts there's anything you can really do to make up for that. So it's like, at this point for me, it's like, might as well go all in on this crazy batshit stuff and just, like, let's kill Jon. Let's kill Jon and all the Starks. Sansa has to come down with an army. Like, there's a big battle. Everyone
only
dies.
baby that is-
Sansa's the only one left. She just sits on the throne. Yeah, I don't know. Something wacky and stupid. That's what I need at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, you know.
Were we just spoiled that the first 4 to 6 seasons, everything was so earned?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it's yeah.
Every little thing felt.
I mean, honestly,
crafted.
in the first 4 seasons straight, there's very little that goes wrong enough to, like, leave a sour taste in my mouth. There's not perfect, but season 5 is the first time where I'm like, ugh. And then season 6 picks back up. Season 7's once again, and then this season's just been wow, like baffling.
I think you look now also at the if you look at the cast of characters that they're working with for the first 4 seasons of this show, and compare it to now. For me, you can just by looking at that, you can see why some of the problems might happen. We're left with who I think we even mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. Like, a lot of these characters were like, for me at least, like middle of the list a lot of the time, and then like they'd have moments that would bump them up to the top. But you look back at like Catelyn Stark, who was a character that every time she was on screen, I ate it up.
But they could have screwed that up. They did, like Tyrion.
Right, yeah.
You think
absolutely. And so, but I do think there's also something about those first 4 seasons where the sheer breadth of characters they have. You're not spending a lot of time in one place.
Right.
There's tons of locations, and this season we've had all those characters in one location. We've been at Winterfell for 4 episodes essentially, and now we're in King's Landing, and everyone's going to be there. So it does feel like, in a way, it feels smaller than it ever has. And maybe that's where some of the cracks are starting to show. Maybe if that was the case for some of these other seasons, we might have seen more stuff like that. But it's weird. It's a bittersweet ending. Like I said, I want so badly there are things in this that I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see it 3 years from now, though, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think 10 seasons of 10 episodes, they could have done we could have spent 3 episodes where all the traveling that happens instantly here happens. And it even if there's a little bit of a pace speed up, it could have been done better. This is the way I look at it. George is writing a 7-book, insane, huge story. But maybe 8 books.
We think. Yeah. Supposedly.
It could have all been a sham. But a lot of people have said, look, if George only gets wins out or gets neither one out.
Well, then Brandon Sanderson will write the rest of them because that's what he does. He writes
George
all the books.
Yeah, but George has said that he doesn't want anyone else to finish it. So, and he even has people who have helped him write those encyclopedias who have all his notes and things. A lot of people have said, look, if George isn't going to finish them, the show has been so good that it will at least give us some sort of piece to know an ending to our story. It's like how there are really good versions of Les Mis and The Count of Monte Cristo that are abridged. And people wanted to say, look, we're not going to get the unabridged version of this story, but we're going to get the abridged version, and it's going to end almost as well and give us all the things that we could have wanted. I think we've reached the point where these last 2 seasons, rather than a abridged version of the ending, because even if George's broad strokes match up, we're getting the Wikipedia article. And that's scary. There's still a lot of things I enjoy about it. I'm still with these characters here, and I think 60 episodes went a long way for me just being like, okay, they're doing in 18 what they should have done in 40, but here we go. But it makes me want George to finish the books a lot more. That being said, I'm obviously higher on this ending than everyone else, which is fine with me. I also like The Last Jedi. Tyler's gonna punch me in the face, and he'll never write with me again. That's how I'm feeling right now.
No,
but
I knew your taste sucked when you said you liked The Last Jedi when we first met.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, I do still have that level of disappointment where I'm like, George, please finish the damn books.
Yeah.
Someone who like is totally on board with this? I'm interested to know.
Okay, whoa, don't say totally on board. I just was pretty critical of it. I just think your guys' level of critical. I'm like,
I felt like this was like the opposite, but okay. So someone who's not as critical as everyone else. And like this isn't supposed to be like a trap question or anything. This is genuinely wanting to know what episode of Game of Thrones is the worst episode of Game of Thrones in the entire series?
The worst episode of Game of Thrones. I don't know if I have an episode that stands out.
The one that you liked the least, or even was just it may have still been positive, but you were like, that didn't quite reach it for me.
It's probably been in these last 2, but there are things like in season 7, because some of the set pieces, like you said, that may be what they're going for, but those are enjoyable enough that I'm there for it. The biggest disappointment might have been the long night battle, just because I felt like that was a culmination in. I was okay with having 2 culminations like happening in one season, but that let me down quite a bit. But I actually it wasn't poorly done or anything. I'm trying to think last season if it was probably a season 7 episode. But I don't have one that thoroughly stands out.
Gotcha. Did we go into the ridiculous scene of the Euron Jamie fight? Did we talk about that?
Didn't.
Oh no, we
When
can
he
pretend
climbed out of the fucking
That-
ocean right there, I was like, wow, what the fuck?
That whole
What a
sequence.
coinkydink.
That whole sequence might be my most hated sequence in the
Euron
entire
might
show.
be the biggest misstep in my
Yes.
mind.
So
Yeah.
bad.
Like that whole sequence, I was
So
just like, I
stupid.
can't believe this is happening. Like
Yeah.
how this is happening. The ending, everything from the beginning to end. I was like, this is such bullshit.
The way, oh man, but the way that ends, just a dolly up above Euron, and he's just got a shitty grin on his face. I'm the man who killed Jaime Lannister.
Such
What
an
an
idiot.
adult! How do
He
you
is-
exist in this world?
Oh
Yeah,
man,
it was
at least I got a good
painful.
laugh out of it.
Yeah. Riley, what about you? End of the show. Is there a path back? Is there?
I don't know. Part of me is just like, if the last episode was just us like following Arya around and her doing whatever she wanted, I'd be like, sweet. Like,
Just a
I don't really care
one-shot.
about anything
We
else.
Just have Birdman.
Yeah.
Just
Birdman, but with
Arya.
Arya. And she gets to wear so many faces. 'Cause there's a lot of faces that can be worn now.
Yeah.
So
Faces. Her face bag is over the brim.
Did you see her going
like
through the city,
Santa.
just like putting them in a
That's
bag?
That would have been really fun.
Ugh.
Does this I mean, are you going to watch the spin-offs?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I will. Once we know more about them, I'll probably know. I will say this is my habit with TV of all kinds at this point. I'm not really watching anything live.
Yeah.
So if I do, I'll probably wait a little bit. But that's just how I am with everything now. So I don't know that says anything definitively about it. I think. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see something that we don't have a bunch of written source material for, and it may shed light on if, for me, that is the problem with this show. I don't know. You know what I mean? If that's where that break comes.
With
But
people
yeah,
playing
I mean,
in this world without
yeah,
George.
I will probably watch it. I just said all those things, and yeah, I'm probably gonna watch it.
Probably just going to
so-
give it 2 to 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same, Riley? You think you'd check it out?
yeah, I'll probably watch it.
Because remember, also, we're not dealing with D&D writing this or their writing team, which they've had a very similar writing team throughout most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, do they kind of carry them with them wherever they go?
Oh, you mean to their next project?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
like, yeah,
where-
I don't know how
where-
that works with like showrunners. You know, like
Yeah.
with their writing team. A lot of times, I mean, I assume it's not always like, oh, everyone cookie cutter comes with us. It's but like, do they like really have a good rapport with a lot of them? And like, you come with us on almost everything. Like,
It depends on the team. That is something I pay attention to a little bit, and a lot of podcasts talk about showrunners and head writers and where they're. There's some people that they consider frequent collaborators, some people who will just do a project here and there with them. So I would think, honestly, a lot of these people may also get their own chance to do something else
Yeah,
just on the heels of
that
being
makes
part of
sense.
this.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Star Wars trilogy that these two are going to do, sorry if that struck fear.
it does a little now. I was
yeah.
excited.
I
at
feel no
first,
fear at anything
Yeah.
anymore related to these things.
The two of them, I mean, there's only so many writers you need on a movie, so.
Yeah.
But they've definitely talked about a couple other series. There are still 3 potential Game of Thrones. There's one like for sure, and then 2 more that are still likely moving forward. But I wonder if HBO is wary about how much they invest now, or because I know a lot of people who are a lot less pissed or are much more casual viewers who are not as not even critical, but they don't care to examine enough to be critical. They're just enjoying it,
And
that's a huge part of it.
I have to imagine those are also the people that aren't reading articles. Like that's
Right.
That's the thing is that's just the type of person I am. In between,
I am
things.
as well.
I
Yeah,
like to read those, just because I like that dialogue. I'd imagine with a property like Game of Thrones, there's still a large enough group of people. Here's the thing: The Walking Dead's been on TV for fucking ever. And even it's getting to the point where even the people who have been watching it all the time are like, yeah, it kind of sucks now, but they're still watching it. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I don't think that the ending of Game of Thrones in any way dissuades HBO, because they're not reading the articles either. What they are looking at are the numbers. Yeah. And I think that the numbers for this season are going to be just as high, if not higher, than any other season. So you know, so so I wouldn't imagine that changes a whole lot.
It's weird for me to think that there's a contingent of people who don't go online to see things that relate to everything that they do. I was also thinking, and this is a little bit more political, but I'm like, if you're on Twitter and BuzzFeed and Reddit, you think that opinion in the world is different from what it really is, because that has so much influence, and maybe that'll continue to affect the younger generation more. But yeah, I don't know how much this affects further storytelling, but I think either way, HBO is, one, going to invest in a failure if they need to, and two, are being they've always had fairly high standards and careful practices when there was a show last year with someone super famous that just bombed on HBO, and it was like terrible, and someone was like, okay, HBO's now at a 90% hit rate. Like, it's not that huge a deal. So I do wonder how the end of this impacts some things.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's sure been an adventure. I mean, I followed some bad series to the end, including Prison Break and Heroes. Those are the two that come to mind. Except I didn't watch the Resurrection season.
Of Prison Break?
Of Prison Break, but yes, of Heroes, but not of Prison Break.
Oh, okay.
I forgot Heroes had a resurrection.
Yeah. It was
I didn't even try it. I saw I watched the first season, and season 2, I was like...
Season 2 started here. Season 3, they did this weird carnival storyline that I actually think people who are kind of weird might like. And then, but it wasn't good. And then season 4 was trash.
I didn't even attempt season 3. That's
crazy.
But yeah,
Prison Break seasons 1 through 3, I was... good.
They're good, yeah.
They're good. Like, they're even in a Central American prison in season 3, and I was like, that's fine. Season 2, they're on the run, but season 4, when it starts getting into, like, now we're
back like, in prison again.
As someone who loves the Fast and the Furious, it is like when they jump the shark from, like, we're car thieves to, we're gonna protect a nuclear asset. That sort of thing.
For sure.
Well, sweet.
Yeah.
One more episode. I won't be here, which is quite sad for me, because we have spent a lot of hours enjoying the show together.
Yeah. I will say, the next time we hear you on
we can talk about that.
We will be visiting the Black Lodge. Well, we won't be there yet. Well, actually, we might be. But we will be watching Twin Peaks.
We will be the rewatchers in the lodge.
Yeah, so it'll be really fun. I will be the only person that has seen it on
that'll be fun.
Podcast. Oh man, I can't wait. So you can look forward to that. And we'll be here next week for the finale. We'll probably see if Justin wants to come back or something, and we'll have someone to keep Mitchell's seat warm for him.
If that episode is as disappointing for you guys as this one, there will be zero redeemability from this podcast.
It'll be fun. But yeah, all right.
Sweet. For Mitchell Marshall, Tyler Harris, Tyler McKinley, and Riley Harris, thanks for rewatching On the Wall with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
The end.
Our watch
ends
next week.
Yes.